Here to provide a DFL perspective on the new legislative districts, we have Senate Minority Leader Tom Bakk. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Senator, let's begin with the new maps. They're drawn. How did the Democrats fare?
Well, at first blush, at least, it appears like we got a fair shake from the courts. Anytime you don't negotiate something and you hand it over to a third neutral party, you always wonder if you're going to get a fair deal out of it. At first blush, at least, it looks like we got a fair map. My position always was, as long as we get a fair map, I think that the message of Democrats is more representative of Minnesota than what we have seen from the Republicans over the last year, getting rid of things like the homestead credit, shifting K-12 funding, cuts to hospitals and nursing homes and residential group homes, and historic cuts to higher ed. We always felt if we get a fair shot at November, Democrats are going to have a very good election. I feel pretty good about the map and our chances for regaining the majority in November.
And you touched a little bit upon the message right there of the DFL with fewer rural seats and more metro area seats. How do you go and work with the DFL now to try and win back the majority and reshape your message?
Well, I don't know if it's a matter of reshaping. I don't think Democrats have changed that much, and I don't believe Minnesota has changed that much. I still think that the views of my caucus are more representative of the state. Clearly this map, like previous ones in other redistricting, have a number of safe DFL seats that are clearly in Democratic hands. It has a number of safe Republican seats that are clearly Republican districts. But as we expected, there will be a large number, something 10 to 12 seats that are in play, that can go either direction depending on the mood of the electorate. I think that's still the case with this map. The legislature, majority in the legislature is in play for either caucus, depending on how people in those swing districts feel in November.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the things you've said in the past, especially recently, about your time here in the legislature and the tone it tends to take once new district maps are released. And there tends to sometimes be a hurry up and let's get out of here so we can campaign mentality. Do you think that's going to be the case now?
Well, I think it depends on who you talk to. And I did tell the Republican leaders from both the House and the Senate before we started the session that they would be wise to try and set up the timeline of this session so that the legislature could adjourn and go home before Easter. I still think that's the right approach. I think they will learn after today. They're going to have a number of members in both the Republican House and in the Republican Senate that, based on their new district, are going to want to go home. And there's not a lot that has to happen this session. We've got a budget in place for this year and for next. If the February forecast comes in okay and we see what the new revenue projections are going to be, the only thing really keeping us here, I think, is to pass some kind of a jobs package to try and put Minnesotans back to work. And I'm going to encourage them strongly after the November forecast or the February forecast comes out on the 29th, that if the budget is okay, and I believe it's going to be, then let's get a bonding bill passed and let's all go home and hit the campaign trail, and Minnesotans will decide in November whose views better represent the needs of our communities.
Now, Senator, it's typically the desire of the courts to keep those with similar economic or cultural status together when these maps are released. Did the courts, in your opinion, do a good job in doing so this time around?
Well, that's one of the significant principles that the court uses, is to try to keep communities of interest together. And it appears like at first blush they have done that. We're not surprised at that. So they also did something that we're not surprised at, is they showed almost no deference to incumbent protection. There are a large number of incumbents that are paired. We expected that to happen. Incumbent protection is not one of the criteria in redistricting. We have some Democrats in the Senate that are paired with their colleagues that are Democrats. We have some Republicans that are paired with Republican colleagues. And up north, at least, I noticed in one district, Senator Saxhog from Grand Rapids, who's a Democrat, is paired with Senator Carlson, who is a Republican that represents Bemidji. So there are pairings both within the caucuses and between the caucuses, between the parties.
All right, Senator, last question. The courts typically have had to issue the maps the last 5 decades. So is this, in your opinion, a sign that the current system in place where the legislature draws them up and then ultimately the courts seem to have the final say, is the system working?
Well, it could always be better. I think what people need to remember is this is all really inside baseball at the legislature. I don't think a lot of people are sympathetic that some incumbents are paired. I don't think the fact that if somebody else represents their community now, it's all that big a deal to people. People are just trying to provide for the needs of their family. That's their primary concern, and who represents them at the Capitol is probably a lesser concern. But you need to remember this is a very partisan thing, probably the most partisan thing that the legislature undertakes, and very hard to reach an agreement on. So it's a good thing we have, in the event we can't reach an agreement, that we have a neutral party that can put a fair plan together, and I believe the courts have done that. Okay,
I do have one last question. You mentioned inside baseball. So in your opinion, moving into the outfield, what do you think Minnesotans need to know as we move forward in this election season, in this campaign season?
Well, I think first, candidates are going to have a lot of work going out into communities they didn't represent before and introduce themselves, explain to new constituents what's important to them, and I would argue even more important, listen to your new constituents about what the issues are in the new communities that you now represent. And to voters, analyze the positions of the candidates that you're going to meet carefully. Elections matter, and the priorities of this state are different depending on who's in control at the legislature. So to all of the voters out there that are, whether you're being represented by the same person, challenge them, tell them what's important to you as a voter and a member of the community, and that's especially important if you've got a new elected official that you haven't met before. Reach out to them, introduce yourself to them so that your concerns are heard by your representatives.
Okay, Mr. Minority Leader, thank you for your perspective. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.